She refused every proposal until a stranger asked one impossible favor. Nashville glittered below the rooftop like someone had spilled a box of diamonds across Tennessee. Ellen McLain barely noticed. At 25, she had already built a reputation as one of those event producers who could make 300 guests, 2 caterers, a nervous band, and 1 demanding client believe everything had gone exactly according to plan. Tonight was no different. Across the rooftop, applause suddenly erupted. A man had dropped to one knee beneath a string of lights. His girlfriend covered her mouth. Ellen's co-worker leaned against the bar beside her. "How many proposals have you turned down now?" 3. Another co-worker passing behind them corrected her. 4. Ellen didn't even look up. He asked twice. "It still counts as one man." A laugh came from behind her, not a polite laugh, a genuinely amused one. Ellen turned. A tall man stood there with a camera hanging from one shoulder, dark hair, rolled sleeves, and the irritatingly relaxed expression of someone who had apparently been listening long enough to become interested. "Michael Murphy, the photographer hired for tonight's event. So you're the woman who says no to everyone." Ellen raised an eyebrow. "Only when they ask stupid questions." Instead of retreating, Michael smiled. "Good." He stepped closer. "I have one." Ellen folded her arms. "Go ahead. Give me 30 days. Her expression changed. "For what?" 30 days. 30 things you'd normally say no to." Ellen laughed. "And after 30 days, nothing. No promise. No relationship contract. No reward waiting at the end. On day 30, you owe me absolutely nothing." Now Ellen was curious despite herself. "Then what exactly are you asking for?" Michael held her gaze. 30 days without saying no to something before you've actually tried it." She stared at the stranger she'd known for less than 5 minutes. "That's insane." Michael smiled. "So that's a yes. And that was the problem." For the first time in a very long time, Ellen McLain didn't immediately know the answer. Why would a woman who had rejected every man who tried to build a future with her give 30 days to a stranger who promised her absolutely nothing? Ellen said no. Of course she did. It happened less than 10 seconds after Michael made his ridiculous proposal on that Nashville rooftop. "No." Michael nodded once. "Okay." That was it. No argument. No teasing attempt to change her mind. No speech about how she was afraid of living. No request for her phone number. He simply reached into his camera bag, pulled out a business card, and handed it to her. "If you change your mind." Then he walked away. Ellen stood there holding the card. She almost threw it away. Instead, for reasons she refused to examine too closely, she slipped it into her purse. 2 days later, she called him. Michael answered on the 3rd ring. "Murphy, I have rules." A pause. Then she heard the smile in his voice. "Ellen McLain, don't sound so pleased." "I wasn't." "You absolutely were." "I was moderately pleased." Ellen ignored him. "No unnecessary danger. Nothing that interferes with my work. Nothing humiliating. Nothing illegal." "That last one really limits my options." "Michael, continue." "And no romantic obligation. This isn't 30 days of dating." "Agreed." "Day 30 ends. We're done. Nobody owes anyone anything." "Agreed." Ellen waited. "That's it? You forgot one." "What?" "You can't say no before you try." She regretted calling him already. At 8 o'clock Saturday morning, Michael pulled into her driveway. Ellen stepped outside with coffee in one hand, then stopped. A motorcycle stood beside him. Michael tossed her a helmet. "Get in." "Absolutely not." Michael looked at his watch. 8 seconds. Ellen frowned. "What? You lasted 8 seconds. I'm not getting on that thing. You agreed not to say no before trying. I also said no unnecessary danger." Michael considered that. "Fair." Then he walked past the motorcycle and opened the passenger door of the pickup parked behind it. Ellen stared. "You did that deliberately. Day 1. I hate you already." That's surprisingly emotional for 8 in the morning. 25 minutes later, Ellen discovered where he was taking her. A beginner's country dance class at a Nashville honky-tonk. "No." Michael pointed at her. She corrected herself. "I have serious concerns." Much better. Ellen insisted she couldn't dance. Michael discovered she was right. She stepped on his foot twice, turned the wrong direction, and nearly collided with a retired accountant named Frank. But 20 minutes later, something unexpected happened. Ellen stopped trying to be good at it. She simply danced. When Michael missed a step and nearly took both of them down, she laughed so hard she had to grab his shoulder. Michael looked at her, not flirtatiously, almost curiously. Ellen noticed. "What? Nothing. You're staring. I'm surprised. Bye?" "You laugh differently when you're not trying to do something correctly." Her smile faded just slightly. Michael didn't explain. He simply offered his hand. Again? This time, Ellen took it. Day 3 was pottery. Ellen's bowl came out looking like it had survived a small earthquake. Michael's was worse. He held it proudly. Abstract. It's a bowl. That's a limiting interpretation. It has a hole in the bottom. Ventilation. Ellen laughed. She was doing that more around him than she intended. Day 5 brought them to a roadside diner outside Franklin. Michael took away the menu. "What are you doing?" "Waitress chooses." Ellen looked genuinely alarmed. "I don't order food without knowing what it is." "Today you do. What if I don't like it?" Michael leaned back. "Then you'll have learned something incredibly useful." "What?" "That you don't like it." She stared at him. "You built an entire personality around being annoying, didn't you? Years of practice." The waitress brought chicken fried steak. Ellen loved it. She refused to admit this until Michael caught her stealing the last piece of gravy with a biscuit. By day 7, Ellen had begun preparing for his surprises, which defeated their purpose. For kayaking, she arrived with sunscreen, 2 bottles of water, a first aid kit, waterproof phone pouch, and a printed sheet. Michael stared at it. "What's that?" "Weather conditions." "You printed the weather? Wind speed, water temperature, UV index, emergency contacts." He took the paper. "Did you make a risk assessment for a kayak?" "Yes." Michael studied the spreadsheet with exaggerated admiration. "I think I'm falling in love with the spreadsheet." Ellen tightened her life jacket. "Good. Date it." But out on the quiet water, Michael asked something she hadn't prepared for. "Why do you always need to know what's coming?" Ellen's paddle stopped for half a second. Then she smiled. "Because that's how adults avoid being found 3 miles downstream." Michael laughed and let the question go. That surprised her. Most people pushed when they sensed a door closing. Michael simply paddled beside her, and somehow that made Ellen want to open it herself. Not yet, but someday, perhaps. Day 8 was different. Michael drove south, without telling her where they were going. Eventually they stopped at a quiet overlook above the rolling Tennessee countryside. The sun was beginning to disappear. Ellen looked around. No restaurant, no hiking trail, no activity. "What are we doing?" "Nothing." She waited. "For how long?" Michael sat on the hood of the truck. "Until we're done." "What's the challenge?" "This." Ellen checked her phone. Michael gently held out his hand. She narrowed her eyes. "You want my phone? Only if you want to try." That distinction mattered. Ellen hesitated, then placed it in his palm. 5 minutes passed. She shifted twice. 10 minutes. She asked what time it was. Michael refused to tell her. By 15 she was irritated. "This is ridiculous." "Why?" "Because we're just sitting here." "Terrifying." She glared at him. Then something changed. The sky turned orange along the horizon. Wind moved through the grass. Somewhere far below, headlights appeared on a country road. There was nothing Ellen needed to fix, nothing to organize, nothing waiting for her answer. She sat beside Michael, and for once, she allowed a moment to happen without asking where it was going. Michael didn't speak. Neither did she. Eventually, Ellen rested her arms against her knees. "This one's not completely terrible," Michael smiled. High praise. He drove her home after dark. When they reached her driveway, Ellen didn't immediately open the door. "Michael? Yeah? Why are you doing this?" He looked at her. She expected another joke. Instead, his voice softened. "Because the first night I saw you, you looked like someone who'd forgotten being surprised could be a good thing." Ellen studied him. That answer landed closer than she wanted it to, so she did what she always did when someone got too close. She redirected. "And what are you afraid of?" Michael's hand stopped on the steering wheel. For the first time in 8 days, the man who always seemed to have an answer had none. His smile disappeared. Outside, Ellen's porch light illuminated the silence between them, and suddenly she wondered whether this challenge had ever really been about her alone. Because Michael Murphy had spent 8 days pushing her toward everything she avoided. But what would happen when it was finally his turn? For the next few days, Ellen couldn't stop thinking about Michael's silence. Not the jokes, not kayaking, the silence. For 8 days, he had asked questions as though fear were simply another trail worth exploring. But when she asked what frightened him, he had looked away. That interested Ellen far more than she wanted to admit. So she started paying attention, really paying attention. Michael's studio was in a converted warehouse near downtown Nashville. He worked there between photography assignments, editing footage at a large desk surrounded by cameras, hard drives, maps, and enough charging cables to power a small airport. On day 10, Ellen stopped by before their challenge. Michael was packing lenses into a camera bag. She noticed a passport lying beside them. "You traveling?" "Not today." "Then why is your passport out?" He shrugged. "It's usually out." She looked toward the corner. A medium-sized suitcase sat half open, still packed. "Did you just get back from somewhere?" "3 weeks ago, and you haven't unpacked." "I took out the dirty clothes." "How responsible." "Thank you." She stared at him. "So that's just permanently ready." "Pretty much." Ellen smiled, but filed the information away. Over coffee, she learned more. Michael had lived in Denver, Austin, Seattle, now Nashville. He'd rented apartments in all 4 cities, owned property in none. Every time work changed, he moved. Every time something interesting appeared, he followed it. Ellen stirred her coffee. "Where's home?" Michael answered instantly. "Wherever my camera batteries are charging," she laughed. "That's terrible." "It's practical. It's avoidance disguised as portability." He raised an eyebrow. "You've known me 11 days, and I'm very efficient." Michael smiled. "That you are." But this time, Ellen noticed he changed the subject. "Interesting." Day 12 arrived with perfect hiking weather. Michael pulled up outside Ellen's place wearing boots and carrying a backpack. "Ready?" Ellen walked toward him. "Change of plans." Michael stopped. "That's my line." "Not today." He studied her face. "What did you do?" "Nothing." "That answer is terrifying." She smiled. "The challenge is unfair." Michael folded his arms. "Explain." "You keep choosing things that make me uncomfortable. That's the point." "Then it's your turn." His expression shifted. Just slightly. Ellen noticed. "If I have to try things before saying no." "Hello. So do you." Michael considered this, then nodded. "Fair. Good. So where are we going?" She smiled sweetly. "You'll find out." For the first time since the challenge began, Michael looked nervous. Ellen enjoyed it far too much. Day 15 was worse. For him. Ellen gave him only one instruction. 6:30. "Don't dress like you're climbing anything." Michael looked down at his shirt. "What does that mean?" "It means there won't be ropes involved." "Then I'm already concerned." At 6:30 sharp, Ellen drove him to her mother's house in Franklin. Michael stared through the windshield at the warm 2-story home. He looked at Ellen, then back at the house. "This is your mother's place." "Excellent observation." He didn't move. Ellen smiled. "What's wrong?" "Nothing. You look like I brought you to a hostage negotiation." "Cliffs are easier." She laughed. "Get out." Inside, Michael immediately discovered why Ellen had chosen family dinner as his challenge. There was nowhere to hide. Ellen's mother, Diane, hugged him before he had time to decide whether handshakes were safer. Her younger sister, Lauren, asked questions at the speed of an interrogation. "What kind of photographer?" "Commercial and documentary." "Have you ever been attacked by an animal?" "Once." "What kind?" "A raccoon." Lauren looked disappointed. "I was hoping for a bear." "So was the raccoon." Ellen laughed into her water. Michael gave her a warning look. She smiled innocently. Dinner started smoothly. Then Diane asked the question Ellen had been waiting for. "So Michael, how long are you staying in Nashville?" He barely hesitated. "We'll see." Ellen looked up. That answer. 2 words. No date. No commitment. She recognized the structure immediately. It sounded exactly like the answers she gave whenever someone asked about marriage. Interesting. After dinner, Lauren disappeared upstairs and returned carrying a large photo album. Ellen immediately pointed at her. "No," Lauren grinned. "Challenge rules." Michael's eyes lit up. "I like her." "You don't know her." "I know enough." The album opened. Birthday parties, school plays, bad haircuts. Then, the spelling bee. A 10-year-old Ellen stood on a stage holding a silver medal with tears running down her face. Michael stared. "You cried because you came second." Ellen snatched at the album. "We agreed not to discuss 2009. Michael pulled it away. "There was no such agreement. I was emotionally invested. You were 10. I knew how to spell conscientious." Lauren laughed. "She didn't talk to anyone for 2 days." Michael looked genuinely impressed. "So you've always handled losing well." Ellen glared at him. "I can still revoke your challenge privileges." "That sounds like quitting." She narrowed her eyes. He smiled. "Point to Michael." "For now." Later, after dinner, Ellen and Michael sat on the back porch. The air smelled faintly of cedar and cooling grass. Inside, Diane and Lauren were cleaning up. Michael looked through the screen door. "Your family's nice. They're loud. Also nice." Ellen smiled, then became quiet. After a moment, she said, "My dad used to sit right there." Michael looked toward the empty chair beside the railing. "He left when I was 11. Michael didn't interrupt. "He wasn't abusive. He wasn't cruel. That's almost what made it worse." She stared across the backyard. "He was the dad who promised he'd always be there. Birthday pancakes, soccer games, family vacations. Then one day, he wasn't." Her voice softened. "People think I'm afraid of commitment." She shook her head. "I'm not. I'm afraid of trusting someone else's version of forever." Michael looked at her differently now. Not as the woman who said no to everything, but as the 11-year-old girl who had learned that promises could disappear while still sounding sincere. "I get that," he said quietly. Ellen turned toward him. "I know." Michael frowned. "What?" She studied him for a moment, then said, "You think I'm afraid of uncertainty." A pause. "You're terrified of certainty." Michael laughed automatically. Ellen didn't. His smile slowly disappeared. "You don't buy houses. You don't sign long leases. You don't take projects that keep you in one place too long. You haven't had a relationship last long enough to require actual furniture decisions." Michael leaned back. "That's oddly specific." "I'm not finished." Of course she wasn't. "You say you love freedom. You call everything temporary. You always know where you're going next, because then you never have to decide where to stay." Michael stared at her. Ellen held his gaze. "You don't avoid cages, Michael." Her voice softened. "You avoid roots." For once, he had absolutely nothing clever to say. And Ellen knew she'd found the thing he hadn't wanted her to see. The porch became quiet. Eventually Michael asked, "So, what happens when two people who are afraid of opposite things start liking each other?" Ellen's heart immediately betrayed her. She kept her expression calm. "They probably do something intelligent." Michael smiled faintly. "Like." Ellen looked at him, at the man who had spent 15 days asking her to try things before rejecting them. Then she leaned closer. "Definitely not this," and kissed him. For several seconds after the kiss, neither Ellen nor Michael moved. The porch light hummed above them. Somewhere inside the house, dishes clinked in the sink. Michael finally looked at her. "Was that part of the challenge?" "No." "Good." "Why good?" "Because I didn't have a backup plan if you said it was." Ellen smiled. Then she caught the front of his jacket and kissed him again. This time, Michael was ready. And somewhere between the first kiss and the second, the rules became considerably less useful. They didn't discuss what they were afterward. No labels. No awkward conversation about exclusivity. The 30-day challenge simply continued, except now Michael's hand sometimes found the small of Ellen's back. Ellen sometimes leaned against his shoulder, and every challenge carried the possibility that one of them might forget what they were doing and kiss the other. On day 18, the challenge was cooking. Michael claimed he could cook. Ellen discovered this was technically true in the same way someone could technically sing while being terrible at it. Smoke drifted from the oven. Ellen opened the door. A tray of garlic bread had become charcoal. She stared at him. "You travel internationally but can't operate an oven? Different skill set. You've filmed in a desert. Deserts don't have temperature knobs." She picked up one blackened piece. This could survive re-entry from space. Michael took it from her. Little dramatic. He bit into it. Immediately reconsidered. Ellen folded her arms. Well? He dropped it into the trash. Needs butter. She laughed so hard she had to turn away. Day 20 brought the county fair. Michael became irrationally determined to win Ellen a stuffed bear from a bottle knockdown game. He missed. Then missed again. And again. By attempt 7, Ellen was watching with increasing concern. When the final bottle fell, Michael lifted both arms like he'd won an Olympic medal. The attendant handed him a stuffed bear, approximately 18 inches tall. Michael presented it proudly. Ellen stared at the bear. Then at him. You spent $40 winning a $12 bear. Principle. Bad financial principle. You're welcome. She took the bear anyway, and carried it for the rest of the night. Michael noticed. He wisely said nothing. By day 21, something else had changed. They were talking more. Not challenge talk. Real talk. One evening, they drove outside Nashville and parked where the city lights faded enough for the stars to become visible. They lay side by side in the bed of Michael's pickup. For once, neither tried to kiss the other. Ellen looked toward him. You never really answered me. That's ominous. Your father. Michael went quiet. Then he exhaled. My dad worked for the same insurance company for 37 years. 37. Same building. Same desk for most of it. Michael looked upward. He bought a house at 27. Paid it off. Mowed the lawn every Saturday. Dinner at 6:30. Vacation at the same lake every summer. Sounds stable. That was the problem. Ellen turned toward him. Michael continued. He stopped talking about things he wanted to do. There was always next year, next summer, after retirement. His voice became quieter. Then retirement came, and he didn't know what to do with it. Ellen understood now. Michael hadn't grown up dreaming of adventure. He had grown up fearing stillness. So you decided you'd never become him. Pretty much. Denver, Austin, Seattle, Nashville, new projects. New roads, new beginnings. Ellen thought about it. Maybe you didn't choose freedom. Michael glanced at her. Maybe you just chose the opposite of your father. He didn't answer. But she saw the thought land. And this time, she didn't push. Day 23 began with a phone call. Michael was at his studio when a documentary producer he'd worked with twice offered him the kind of assignment photographers talked about for years afterward. 6 months, South America, multiple countries, remote communities, mountains, coastlines, a documentary series with serious international exposure. Michael didn't hesitate. Yes. The producer laughed. You haven't even heard the schedule. Send it. Ellen happened to be standing 6 feet away. She'd brought coffee. Michael ended the call smiling. That was South America. His smile faded slightly. You heard. 6 months? Probably. And you already said yes. This is huge, Ellen. I know. Then what's wrong? She set his coffee down. Nothing's wrong with the project. Michael waited. You didn't even stop. For what? There it was. Ellen looked at him. For anything. Michael's expression hardened. This is what I do. Exactly. He folded his arms. What is that supposed to mean? It means you just proved my point. I'm supposed to reject a career opportunity because we've kissed a few times? I didn't ask you to reject it. Then what are you asking? To notice that there was something to consider. Silence. Ellen shook her head. You didn't think about your studio. Nashville. Me. You didn't even think about whether you wanted 6 months away. Because I do. Or because leaving is always easier for you than staying long enough to find out what something becomes. That hit. Michael stepped back. And you'd rather know the ending before you even start. Ellen's face changed. At least I admit I'm scared. Michael said nothing. Neither did she. For the first time in 23 days, there was no next challenge scheduled. Day 24 passed. No call. Day 25 did too. Ellen hated how often she checked her phone. She hated the stuffed bear on her couch even more. Because every time she saw it, she remembered Michael spending $40 proving a completely meaningless point. Apparently, she thought bitterly, he could commit to carnival games. Just not tomorrow. At 7:14 on the morning of day 26, someone knocked. Ellen opened the door. Michael stood there, no backpack. Morning. She crossed her arms. What's today's terrible idea? I don't have one. That might be your worst yet. He almost smiled, then didn't. I think I've been cheating. Ellen's eyebrows rose. On me? Michael blinked. No. A beat. On the challenge. Oh. Ellen wasn't sure whether she was relieved or embarrassed by how quickly she'd asked. Michael continued. I've spent 25 days making you do things you don't control. He looked at her directly. Then the second you found something I don't control well, I got defensive. Ellen's arms slowly uncrossed. You were right. She hadn't expected that. Michael took a breath. I've been asking you to walk toward things that scare you, while making sure every challenge still happens on terrain I'm comfortable with. Then he said the words Ellen had never expected from Michael Murphy. Your turn. She stared at him. Pick something I'm afraid of. No joke followed. Michael was serious, and suddenly Ellen knew exactly what challenge to give the man who had crossed mountains, slept beneath unfamiliar skies, changed cities without looking back, and built an entire life around always having somewhere else to go. She smiled slowly. Michael saw it. For the first time since they'd met, he looked genuinely worried. What? Ellen reached for her coffee. You wanted a challenge. I don't like that expression. You shouldn't. Michael swallowed. So what are we doing? Ellen looked at the man who seemed afraid of almost nothing, then gave him the one challenge she knew he couldn't outrun. Stay. Michael frowned. Where? Her smile disappeared. Here. And for the first time, the next adventure Michael Murphy faced required him to go absolutely nowhere. Michael stared at Ellen. Stay. Where? Here. He glanced around her front porch. Here as in Nashville. Here as in one full day without trying to escape ordinary life. I don't escape ordinary life. Ellen gave him a look. Michael reconsidered. Fine. What are the rules? No camera. No road trip. No itinerary. No finding some hidden waterfall before lunch. That sounds unnecessarily restrictive, and you're not allowed to turn grocery shopping into an adventure. Michael frowned. How would I even do that? I've known you 26 days. You'd find a way. For a man who had slept in deserts, crossed mountain passes, and boarded planes with less than 24 hours' notice, Ellen had designed something surprisingly difficult. A normal day. They started at a grocery store. Michael pushed the cart, while Ellen checked a handwritten list. Coffee. In the cart. Eggs. Got them. Tomatoes? Michael pointed. Ellen stared at the bag. Those are apples. They're red. You've traveled through 17 countries. 18. And somehow basic produce defeated you. Michael dropped the apples into the cart anyway. Emergency fruit. Nothing remarkable happened. That was the point. They went home. Made lunch. Michael fixed a loose shelf in Ellen's laundry room that she'd been meaning to repair for 6 months. She washed clothes while he cooked. After lunch, they walked to a coffee shop. No destination afterward. No challenge waiting. They simply walked back, and Michael slowly realized something uncomfortable. He liked it, not because grocery stores were exciting, not because laundry had suddenly become meaningful, but because Ellen was there. He'd spent years believing a memorable life required memorable places. Yet somehow he would remember Ellen standing barefoot in her kitchen, arguing about how much garlic belonged in pasta sauce. Maybe ordinary wasn't the opposite of adventure. Maybe ordinary only became empty when there was nobody you wanted to share it with. The real crisis arrived at 4 in the afternoon. Laundry. Michael pulled a fitted sheet from the dryer. 10 minutes later, Ellen found him still fighting it. What are you doing? Folding. No. You're wrestling. This thing has no geometry. Ellen took it from him. You've climbed mountains. Mountains have corners. She laughed. Michael watched her fold it neatly in seconds. That feels like witchcraft. 30-day challenge. Day 27. Basic adulthood. I want kayaking back. No. Michael pointed at her. You said no. The challenge was originally mine. I make the rules. Corruption. Absolutely. And just like that, the ordinary afternoon became one of Michael's favorite days of the month. That realization frightened him more than he admitted. South America remained between them. The contract sat in Michael's inbox. 6 months. A spectacular opportunity. He hadn't turned it down. Ellen hadn't asked him to. That mattered. Late that afternoon, they sat outside with coffee. Michael finally mentioned it. "I still haven't decided what I'm doing about the documentary." Ellen nodded. "Okay." He waited. "That's it? What do you want me to say?" "I don't know." "Don't go?" Michael looked at her. Ellen shook her head. "If you stay because I ask you to, then eventually I'm going to wonder whether you resent me." She took a sip. "And you'll wonder too. So you're not going to make this easy." "No." Michael smiled faintly. "Consistent." Ellen looked at him. "You spent almost a month asking me to make my own choices." Her voice softened. "I'm not going to make yours for you." Michael didn't answer. For once, uncertainty belonged entirely to him. By day 29, neither had mentioned what would happen after the challenge ended. Michael drove Ellen east toward the Smoky Mountains. The irony wasn't lost on her. You survived one normal day and immediately needed a mountain. Recovery takes time. They reached an overlook before sunset. The valley below them was already filling with shadow, while the ridges caught the last orange light. It reminded Ellen of day 8, except she was different now. This time she didn't ask what they were supposed to do. She simply sat beside him. Michael reached into his jacket and pulled out a small box. Ellen's entire body stiffened. "Don't." Michael stopped. "You haven't seen it. I know what boxes that size mean. Apparently 3 men have traumatized you with jewelry packaging." "Michael." He opened it. Inside was a quarter. Ellen stared, then looked at him. 25 cents? Don't underestimate my budget." She started laughing. Michael removed the coin. "Flip it." "For what?" "Heads. I plan tomorrow." "And tails?" He placed the coin in her palm. "You do." Ellen closed her fingers around it. "And after tomorrow?" Michael looked toward the mountains. "That's not part of the deal." The answer hurt more than she expected, because she understood what he meant. 30 days. That was what she'd agreed to. Michael wasn't going to transform the challenge into a trap. He wasn't going to ask her to choose him. He wasn't going to kneel beneath a Tennessee sunset and become the 4th man asking her for a future she wasn't ready to promise. When day 30 ended, she owed him nothing, exactly as he'd promised. And suddenly Ellen understood something terrifying. For years, she'd believed freedom meant always having the ability to leave. But Michael was giving her that freedom now. And instead of wanting to run, she wanted a reason to stay. Michael nudged her shoulder. "McLain?" She looked down at the quarter, then placed it on her thumb. "What happens if it lands on the edge?" "I marry the spreadsheet." Ellen laughed, then flipped. The quarter spun upward, catching the last light. Michael caught it against the back of his hand. Neither spoke. Slowly, he uncovered it. They both looked down, and Ellen smiled. The next morning, Michael woke to a message. No greeting, no explanation, only an address in Franklin. And beneath it, 10 a.m. "Don't bring a plan." Michael read it twice, then smiled. For 29 days, he'd been the one creating the surprises. On day 30, he had absolutely no idea what Ellen McLain was about to do. And strangely, he couldn't wait. At exactly 10 a.m., Michael pulled into a quiet neighborhood in Franklin. He checked the address Ellen had sent him, then checked it again. No restaurant, no trailhead, no surprise activity. Just a modest 2-story house with a wide front porch. Ellen was already sitting there. 2 cups of coffee waited on the small table beside her. Michael climbed the steps. "This is day 30? "Yes." "What are we doing?" Ellen lifted her coffee. "Nothing." Michael laughed. "You're terrible at this. Sit down." He did. For a while, neither spoke. Then Ellen looked at the house. "I grew up here." Michael understood. This wasn't random. This was the place where Ellen had first learned that someone could promise to stay, and still leave. "You spent 30 days teaching me not to be afraid of things I couldn't predict," she said. Michael smiled faintly. "Some days went better than others, but you're still afraid of tomorrow." His smile disappeared. Ellen turned toward him. She wasn't asking him to abandon South America. She wasn't asking for forever. She only asked one question. "When you picture coming back." She paused. "Is there anything here you actually want to come back to?" Michael looked at her. This time there was no joke. "Yes." One word. It was enough. Ellen smiled and kissed him. At 11:59 that night, her phone buzzed. "Michael, 30 days. You survived." Ellen smiled. "Barely." A moment later, "You don't owe me anything." She stared at those words, then locked her phone without answering. Because Michael was right. She didn't owe him anything. Whatever came next, she wanted it to be something she chose. The next morning, Michael unlocked his studio and stopped. Ellen was sitting on the edge of his desk, 2 coffees beside her. "What are you doing here? You said 30 days. Yes. You never said what happens on 31. Michael smiled. Ellen walked toward him. For years, Ellen McLain had been the woman answering proposals. This time, she would make one. "Michael Murphy. This sounds serious. Would you like to find out what happens next?" He studied her. "Is that a proposal? Don't ruin it. I'm clarifying the terms." Ellen laughed. "Fine." She stepped closer. "Yes, it's a proposal. A beat. Just not that kind." Michael smiled. Then yes, and kissed her. Michael didn't give up South America. Ellen never asked him to. Instead, he negotiated the assignment into shorter filming periods rather than disappearing for 6 uninterrupted months. There would still be airports, mountains, unfamiliar roads. But for the first time in Michael's life, every departure included a plan to return. And Ellen? She still liked schedules. She still made spreadsheets. She still hated surprises involving motorcycles. But she no longer needed to know exactly where every good thing was going before allowing herself to enjoy it. Weeks later, Michael stood beside his packed suitcase before his first South America shoot. Ellen looked at the luggage. "You're actually coming back?" Michael smiled. "That's the plan." "I thought you hated plans." He picked up his camera bag. "I'm trying something new." Ellen handed him a folded piece of paper. Michael opened it. Written across the top, Day 31. It had been crossed out. Underneath, Ellen had written, Day 1. Michael looked at her and understood. Not another challenge. Not another countdown. The first day of something neither of them could completely predict. But both had chosen anyway. Ellen McLain had spent years believing that saying no was how she protected her future. Michael Murphy had spent just as long believing that never staying too long was how he protected his freedom. Then 2 people who feared opposite things gave each other 30 days. He taught her that uncertainty didn't always end in abandonment. She taught him that staying didn't always mean being trapped. And in the end, Michael never became the 4th man to ask Ellen for forever. He asked for something much harder, a chance, 30 uncertain days. And when those 30 days were over, the woman who had refused every proposal finally made one of her own, not for marriage, just for tomorrow. And for the first time, tomorrow was enough. Love doesn't always begin with a promise of forever. Sometimes it begins when 2 people are brave enough to choose tomorrow. Ellen and Michael learned something from each other. Being careful isn't the same as being safe, and being free isn't the same as always having somewhere else to go. Sometimes, the bravest thing you can do isn't promise someone forever. It's simply choosing tomorrow with them, without knowing exactly what tomorrow will bring. So here's a question for you. Which would scare you more, taking a chance on someone who might eventually leave, or realizing you walked away from someone who might have stayed? Tell me what you would do in the comments. And if you enjoy emotional love stories, subscribe to Soul-Stirring Stories, because sometimes the most important love story isn't the one that begins with, "Will you stay forever?" It's the one that begins with, "Would you like to see what happens tomorrow?"